Learning objectives. In this chapter, the user would learn the following in detail. Photometry, measurement of incident and reflected light, color temperature, reflectance, foot candles, brightness and contrast ratios, reciprocity law, exposure control, light, Hollywood lighting, expressionist lighting, neorealist lighting, softening of images, tonal variations. Lighting introduction. The type of electromagnetic wave that is visible to the human eye. Lighting or illumination. Let us study some basic terms related to lighting. Daylight, indoor lighting, outdoor lighting. Lighting or illumination is a deliberate use of light to achieve a practical or aesthetic effect. Daylighting is sometimes used as the main source of light during daytimes in buildings. Indoor lighting is usually accomplished using light fixtures and is a key part of interior design. Lighting can also become an intrinsic component of landscape projects. Outdoor lighting should be carefully designed with regard to placement, intensity, timing, duration, and color. Street lights are used to light roadways and walkways at night. Some manufacturers are designing LED and photovoltaic luminaires to provide an energy-efficient alternative to traditional street light fixtures. Photometry. Photometry is a science of the measurement of light in terms of its perceived brightness to the human eye. It is distinct from radiometry, which is the science of measurement of radiant energy, including light in terms of absolute power. In modern photometry, the radiant power at each wavelength is weighted by a luminosity function that models human brightness sensitivity. Measurements of incident and reflected light. Incident light. Incident light is a light that falls on a subject either directly or indirectly. Direct sources of incident illumination are sources that emit light, like the sun or a strobe unit aimed at the subject. Indirect sources of incident illumination redirect light onto the subject. Reflected light. Reflected light is a light that bounces off your subject and other elements in the scene. Like incident light, it can be measured in quality and quantity, enabling you to readily define the mood of the image. Light meter. Reflected light meters measure the amount of light that is reflected by a scene or subject. Incident light metering. A more accurate metering method is to use an incident light meter. This type of handheld light meter measures the amount of light falling on the subject. Color temperature. Color temperature is a characteristic of visible light that has important applications in lighting, photography, videography, publishing, manufacturing, astrophysics, horticulture, and other fields. In practice, color temperature is only meaningful for light sources that do in fact correspond somewhat closely to the radiation of some black body. That is, those on a line from reddish orange via yellow and more or less white to bluish white. It does not make sense to speak of the color temperature of, say, a green or a purple light. The XY chromaticity space also showing the chromaticities of black body light sources of various temperatures. Color temperature is a measurement in degrees Kelvin that indicate the hue of a specific type of light source. You can use a color temperature to suggest realistic colors for the lights in a 3D scene. Reflectance. Reflectivity or reflectance is a fraction of incident electromagnetic power that is reflected at an interface in contrast to the reflection coefficient, which is the ratio of the reflected to incident electric field. Foot candle. A foot candle, sometimes foot candle abbreviated FC or LM by feet squared, or sometimes foot-c, is a non-SI unit of illuminance or light intensity widely used in the United States in photography, film, television, conservation lighting, the lighting industry, construction-related engineering, and in building codes. The name foot candle conveys the illuminance cast on a surface by one candela source 1 foot away. Brightness and contrast ratio. Brightness. The brightness of a display describes the luminance of the monitor or how much light it projects. This luminescence is measured by candelas per meter squared, which are also referred to as nits. Greater brightness is often associated with greater perceived picture beauty and clarity, but this is not always true in real-world environments. Contrast ratio. The contrast ratio is a property of a display system defined as a ratio of the luminance of the brightest color, white, to that of the darkest color, black, that the system is capable of producing. A high contrast ratio is a desired aspect of any display. It has similarities with dynamic range. Exposure control. An appropriate exposure for a photograph is determined by the sensitivity of the medium used. For photographic film, sensitivity is referred to as film speed and is measured on a scale published by the International Organization for Standardization, ISO. Lights. Hollywood lighting. Types of film lighting. Practical lighting. Open-phase tungsten. Fresnel. LED. Hydrargyromedia. Fluorescence. Xenon. Sun guns. Practical lighting. Practical lighting refers to any source that forms part of the scene itself and does not need to be hidden from the camera. Lights such as household lamps with shades are practicals. They fit in with the natural look of the location and don't break the illusion of reality for the audience of a film. An example of practical lighting in this case, a couple of lamps and a wood stove. Open-phase tungsten. Tungsten lights are simply larger versions of the everyday lighting found in your home using a filament of tungsten wire. There are two types, a studio or full-size lamp and a smaller baby light. In reality, these can both be pretty much any size, but the baby version is always the smaller of the two lights of the same type, making them handier for location work as they are more portable. Fresnel. A Fresnel is a type of lens placed in front of lamps, such as tungsten sources, in order to focus the light given off into a controllable beam. This is very useful in creating a spotlight effect as well as being able to cover a relatively small portion of a scene. LED. LED lighting consists of a series of small diodes which are extremely energy efficient and produce a lot more lumens, brightness of light at a given wattage. Another side to this efficiency is that they remain cool to the touch throughout their use, making them a safer and more easy to handle, not to mention comfortable, than many other types of lights. Hydrargyromedium, HMIs. While producing 3 to 4 times the amount of a light of a tungsten halogen, the more pricey HMI lamp consumes up to 75% less energy for the same output. Because of this energy efficiency, like LEDs, HMIs also generate considerably less heat than tungsten lights. Fluorescence. Color-corrected fluorescent tubes are an extremely popular lighting method because of their portability and compact nature. Originally created by the Kinoflow company in 1987, this brand remains the most common for these lights. Xenon. Similar to HMIs in the way they work, Xenon arc lamps feature a polished parabolic reflector that gives them amazing range and focus. The light they give out is almost like a laser beam. They can potentially project a beam of light for several blocks without it spreading too much. Sun guns. This handheld battery-operated light come in two basic varieties, tungsten and HMI. Tungsten sun guns are normally 12 or 13 volt, powered by a battery belt. Running time for these is about 20 minutes. HMI sun guns have a daylight balance and are more efficient. Hollywood lighting, 3-point lighting. 3-point lighting is a standard method used in visual media such as video, film, still photography, and computer-generated imagery. By using 3 separate positions, the photographer can illuminate the shot subject, such as a person, however desired, while also controlling or eliminating entirely the shading and shadows produced by direct lighting. Types of 3-point lighting. 3 lights, the key light, full light, and rim light, also called backlight, are adjusted to achieve the classic Hollywood lighting scheme called 3-point lighting. Key light. The key light, as the name suggests, shines directly upon the subject and serves as its principal illuminator. More than anything else, the strength, color, and angle of the key determines the shot's overall lighting design. Fill light. The fill light also shines on the subject, but from a side angle relative to the key, and is often placed at a lower position than the key, about the level of the subject's face. It balances the key by illuminating shaded surfaces and lessening or eliminating chiaroscuro effects, such as a shadow cast by a person's nose upon the rest of the face. Backlight. The backlight, also known as the rim, hair, or shoulder light, shines on the subject from behind, often but not necessarily to one side or the other. It gives the subject a rim of light, serving to separate the subject from the background and highlighting contours. Backlight or rim light is different from a kick in that a kick or a kicker contributes to a portion of the shading on the visible surface of the subject, while a rim light only creates a thin outline around the subject without necessarily hitting the front visible surface of the subject at all. This is a three-point lighting method that is usually followed in all media works. Hollywood lighting. One of the key characteristics that defined this style of Hollywood lighting was a very dramatic light, with the main key light normally coming from high above the subject. This adds some shadow to the face, which gives the person depth and also adds some extra drama to the image. The lighting for these types of images is generally not shot with flash units or strobes. Expressionist lighting. Lighting in expressionist films use simple lighting from the front and sides, illuminating the scene flatly and evenly to stress the links between the figures and the decor. In some notable cases, shadows are used to create additional distortion. There are no rules for expressionistic lighting, but there are a couple of general principles. Think of a screen not as a window on reality, but as a surface displaying a painting. Don't simulate reality. Light to create an emotional impact. When your light faces expressionistically, you can set a key light in an odd position, like under the chin, or omit to fill light entirely and let the off-key side of the face go black. Neorealistic lighting. The lighting settings in the default 3D seed file that comes with MicroStation V8i are not optimized for rendering with Luxology. The good thing is that it is easy to make changes that improve the rendering output dramatically. Softening of images. Graphics programs can be used to both sharpen and blur images in a number of ways, such as unsharp masking or deconvolution. Portraits often appear more pleasing when selectively softened, particularly the skin and the background, to better make the subject stand out. This can be achieved with a camera by using a large aperture, or in the image editor by making a selection and then blurring it. Tonal variations. In photography, tonal range refers to mid-tone values expanding to occupy the scale between the lightest and darkest points of an image. The wider the range expands, the more contrast there is, and the more mid-tone values will be represented in the image. An image with a narrow tonal range would cover a more restricted area between its lightest and darkest values, thus mainly consisting of midtones and in turn having less contrast. Reciprocity law. In photography, reciprocity is the inverse relationship between the intensity and duration of light that determines the reaction of light-sensitive material. The effect of reciprocity failure in black and white photomicrographs is illustrated. Within a normal exposure range for film stock, for example, the reciprocity law states that the film response will be determined by the total exposure defined as intensity into time. Therefore, the same response can result from reducing duration and increasing light intensity, and vice versa. Conclusion. In this chapter, we have covered the following in detail. Photometry, measurement of incident and reflected light, color temperature, reflectance, foot candles, brightness and contrast ratios, reciprocity law, exposure control, light, Hollywood lighting, expressionist lighting, neorealist lighting, softening of images, tonal variation.